Okay, dirt-free on the bottom. Good. I was wondering what was leaving all these little brown crumbs all over the place. It turns out it was this little guy. He was pooping all over the place. Welcome back to the Voodoo Garden. My name is Ray, and I am the host of this nonsense I lovingly call the Garden of Voo. We have some new additions, and it's thanks to one of you. Yeah, thanks to one of you, I have some new additions. Somebody asked, don't know who it was, but somebody asked, Ray, why don't you grow ferns in the Voodoo Garden? Do you like to grow ferns? And I thought, yeah, I love to grow ferns. I don't know why I'm not growing ferns. And then I thought about it. After a while, I thought about it. The reason I don't grow ferns is because it's hard to find them locally. The only place I can go is Walmart. That's it. When you live out in the middle of nowhere, you're kind of limited on what you can do. And ordering them online, you never know what you're going to get. So once in a while, Walmart will have ferns. Thing is, they have those ones that you grow outdoors. I don't know if they're Boston ferns or what, but they're hanging outside. Well, when they're hanging out in the sun, it's kind of hard to acclimate them to indoors. And I know ferns are kind of touchy at times. So I just waited and I waited, and this is what I got. They're not your typical kinds of ferns, and that's what I like for the Voodoo Garden. I saw this little booger sitting there, and he was calling to me, or she was calling to me, for a couple dollars. They had it on the clearance rack. I don't know what kind of fern it is. Maybe you can tell me, or maybe this tag can tell me. I'll have to get my other glasses to read it. And I also got this one right here that I already transplanted, because along with the fern being on sale, they had their pots. $2 for new pots. And you know how my old pots like these are starting to fade out and look kind of ugly? Well, brand spanking new, and only a couple bucks. I'm going to give you a close-up shot of this and tell you what it is, because this one's a little bit unusual. This, although not a fern, it called to me as well. This is a palm. Don't know what kind of palm it is, because well, you actually got to see this to believe it. Talk about phoning it in. Take a look at this. This is the first one I showed you. Yes, this is a fern. Ferns come in all different shapes, sizes, colors, textures. I did like the look of this one. It's not a Boston fern. It's a common kind of fern. Now let me take a look at this, and let's see. Oh, well, yeah. See, that helps. I love these tags. Look what it says. Fern. Really? That's the best you can do? It was a very generic tag, so I have no idea what kind of fern this is. But it does look good, doesn't it? Yeah, it looks very healthy. Now, one of the problems that I had, an issue that I had with this, and it wasn't an issue, it was just that I didn't know. And when I don't know, I take that as a challenge for me to know. I looked underneath this because I want to examine my plants for insects. Well, I didn't have my magnifying glass at the store. So I brought this home, and I turned it upside down, and look at what I saw on here. See those dots? Yeah, not so good, huh? And then, let me bring this up closer to you so you can see it. Look at these brown dots. Yeah, I saw those and I thought, oh no, what's going on here? And they were on more than one leaf. They were all over the place, like on these leaves as well. And I had to get my magnifiers, my super powerful, happy lucky magnifiers, and look at those things. It turns out they're not scale or insects or any kind of problem with the plant. They're spores. Yeah, well, some of you may think, Ray, why didn't you know that? Well, we don't know something until we know it. And it turns out those are spores. That's how these plants propagate. They don't form seeds or anything. They form spores. And they got the male and the female, and however that works. I don't get all too involved in that. All I know is they're spores, and they release spore things. Yeah, little spore capsules. So that's what that was, and it's very healthy. The only problem is I don't know what kind of fern this is. And another thing that I learned very, very quickly, and it was due to necessity, is that this was very, very moist when I got it. It was literally saturated. It was in another container, and Mike, my friend, I gave it to him. I said, would you put this in the basket? And he felt it. He said, this is kind of heavy, and he turned it upside down. And water poured out of this thing, and it was almost like a joke the way the water poured out. It kept pouring out and pouring out and pouring out, and when you thought it couldn't pour out any more water, it kept pouring out water. The people, they just soak these things, and they don't really go by how much water it needs. Well, I thought, well, this is flooded. I set it to the side in here. I figured it's going to take a week to dry out. Well, it didn't take long at all to dry out. A few days later, I noticed the top was getting a little bit scrunched up. And I thought, oh crap, this is why I don't grow these things, because they die on me at the drop of a hat. The soil felt normal, but not quite as heavy as I would imagine it would be. So what I did was I took the whole plant, dunked the pot into my 5-gallon container of compost tea, let it soak in there for a minute, pulled it out, let it drip all the way out until so the soil was totally soaked. I put it back underneath the light and it perked up. Oh boy, did it perk up. So it really does like the compost tea, and it does like to be soaked in water every few days. Now that's a good thing. Now you can hear all that noise going on in here. It's a very loud day in the Voodoo Garden, and that's because I have something a little bit different. I want to show you that so that you'll know where the noise is coming from. It's coming from this. This is an aquarium aerator, and it's a small one. It has a little vibration going on. What it does is it pumps air from the atmosphere into a plastic tube, and we swing over here, and this is my 5-gallon bucket where I have my compost tea. This is the compost that I'm making outside, and what I do is I take about a handful, toss it in here, fill this up with water, and it's a very light colored tea, almost like very, very watered down coffee. You can see through it very good. Well, what I do is I put it in there, let it set, I stir it up, let it set for a day, then stir it up the next day, and it's way darker. And that's when I start using it. I let it set for a while because it takes a while for the compost to leach out the nutrients and also the good stuff, other good stuff, into the water. Well, I wasn't using as much as I normally do, and I don't like to stir it every day. It was a pain in the butt. So what I did was I had this aerator, and this is what's called an air stone. They're very inexpensive. You hook the tube onto that, and it makes little tiny bubbles come out all over on this thing, and that keeps the water aerated. Because if you let your compost tea just sit in there without stirring it or aerating it, it starts to get a little funky, if you know what I mean. It just reeks. And that just means that the bacteria, the anaerobic bacteria, are starting to form in there. And that's not what I want. Not that they're going to hurt anything, they just kind of stink. And I don't want stink in the Voodoo Garden. So what I did was I put that in there. That keeps it aerated and keeps it odor free. Yep, and that way I don't have to stir it every day, and this can keep almost indefinitely because the air keeps the good bacteria forming in there. Although my compost tea is not a bacteria forming colony like regular compost tea. This is a steeped tea, so I'm not doing it for the bacteria. The only reason I'm putting air in there is to keep it from stinking. So don't confuse this with the aerated compost tea. That's why you're hearing this sound of the buzzing going on in here. Okay, now back to Fern Palooza. This is the second fern that I got. This is different than the first one in that it has these thin, very delicate brown stems that come up, and then at the top of them it puts out its fern leaves. The other one has fern leaves that have leaves going all the way down the stem. This one does not. And they come out this brownish color and kind of curly, and then they straighten up a little bit, but not too awful much, and they turn green. Yeah, that's kind of different. Now let's pull this tag out and see what it says. It says ribbon fern, tricolor ribbon fern. At least they gave me a little bit more information on this one than they gave me on fern. Now this one's already been repotted. It came in a tiny pot just like the other one. I repotted it. We'll see how this goes. I have no guarantees on me growing ferns. Like I said, I've never really had great luck on them because they require a ton of humidity. A lot of people mist them every day. I figure it's humid in the Voodoo Garden all the time. Maybe they'll survive in here. I really don't know. So let's keep our fingers crossed. I hope this one lives because it is kind of cute. Now I'm going to bring out another one. Hold on. Stay right there. This is non-fern. This is a palm. Yes, a palm. There are endless types of palms. I've grown only one kind extensively, and that was many, many years ago when I had a plant store. I grew Areca palms, and I don't know if this is a small one or not. All it says is, as if the tags couldn't get any dumber, beautiful home decor. Yes, beautiful home decor. And it says underneath, I don't know if you can read it, it says, hello, my name is Houseplant. Well, thank you for that. I really do appreciate that. That's all it tells me about this plant. House plant. I have to keep this label because it's the funniest one I've ever seen. What this is, down at the bottom, it looks like a whole bunch of them growing out. Now, some palms will do that. They're going to grow more and more of these things out of one plant. But I don't know if this is one plant that's doing this or if it's just a whole bunch of them. I don't know enough about this, and I can't really identify it. My first thought was Areca palm. Now, what I'm going to have to do when I transplant this, it hasn't been transplanted yet, is I'm going to have to transplant it just a tiny bit deeper, just a little bit, maybe a half an inch deeper, because I want to cover up the very bottom of this to make sure it roots well. And I'm going to use the same type of mix for all of these that I use for my other plants. High on the compost, mixed with coir, which is, for those of you who are new and you haven't heard about my coir, this. Yep, coir is nothing but coconut shavings, the hair off the outside of a coconut off a tree. They shave it, grind it, they dry it, grind it, and then they compress it into these bricks. And these bricks can be quite large. This one, it's an 11-pound brick. And what you do is you just take a screwdriver and a hammer and you just flake it off and get a piece like this, put it in a bucket or a container, add lukewarm water, room temperature water, stand back, and it expands and it crumbles and it turns dark, dark, dark brown, and it becomes basically a growing medium. Now, there's no nutrients in this, so you have to add nutrients. That's why the compost comes in. I make the compost outside. Incredibly rich. I mix it with this, so you have the growing medium, and then you have the compost for the food, and then it needs a little something to lighten it up. I use vermiculite. That's a volcanic rock, and that, hold on, I got everything. This is a full service show and tell. And I believe this is made from mica. Yeah, I'm not quite, I'm pretty sure of that. Yeah, that's what vermiculite is, see? And this will absorb a little bit of water, it releases some water, but it also lightens up the soil. I like this stuff. And that's all I use. I am totally off potting soil. I've had nothing but bad luck with that over the years, and finally, I've got what I need. I've got the compost that I can use indoors. I got enough of this at a good price, and I still have some of this left over in a 25-pound bag that I bought years ago. So I'm mixing up my own soil, and all the plants do tend to like it. They seem to like it. Some of them, not so much, and that's where I'm going to pick you up off this stand, and we're going to go for a little walk, and I'm going to show you what happened when I put them into this soil. Now, it's not just ferns that I grow. I grow succulents, I have a cactus in here, I grow tropicals, I grow everything. Everybody's welcome in the Garden of Voo. This thing, I don't know what it's called, but it's sort of, I think it's closely related to the aloe in a way, or yucca. Now, I got this as a very, very small plant in an itty-bitty pot ages ago, and I also got an aloe. Those of you who have been here for a while, you remember it. The pot was one of those too cute to be cute pots. It was about that big, and it had this itty-bitty aloe with two little fat, stubby leaves about the size, half the size of my thumb. Well, I transplanted it into a bigger pot. This one was also in a small pot. It's grown a little bit, but not too awful much. I mixed it in with my soil mix here, so it's not growing. Succulents generally grow in sandy soil with very little nutrients. This one is in my potting mix. So yes, there is rich compost in here. It gets medium to bright light in the VoodooGarden. It's not growing fast, but then again, I don't think that they're supposed to grow fast. One thing it did do is it did this. It put out a stalk, and I believe this is a flower stalk. This thing grew for almost a year in here and did nothing, and I put the compost in there, and now I'm getting a flower stalk. So it does appreciate that. I wanted to show this to you because I don't know what's going to come out on the top, what the flowers are going to look like, but when it does open up, you and I are going to see what the flowers look like. I hope that they're at least something worth looking at. This multicolored philodendron, the variegated philodendron, was in a small pot. I put it in here. A few episodes back, you saw how scraggly it looked. It looked really sad. Well, here's the fill out. It's looking like a normal plant now. It's actually looking very nice, and it's starting to trail. But aside from that, notice that the leaves, they started out smaller, but if we go down here to all this new growth, see, this is all new growth down towards the end. Look at how big they're getting compared to the older leaves. They're bigger, healthier. The stems are thicker. Look at how thick the stems are, and they got that nice rosy glow to them. Whereas back in the beginning, they just had those spindly dark green ones. So it's having an effect on that, and I really do like that change in this plant. It's going to grow nicely in here. And for my birthday, I got this. Yeah, this you've all seen this listed online. This little baby Groot. I really like that show, Guardians of the Galaxy, and I like the baby Groot on part 2. So Mike got me that, and so little Groot's going to be hanging out here in the Voodoo Garden for a while. This prickly little booger was sent to me by a friend in Texas, and it was this little tiny thing in a pot, and I've been watering it with compost tea. I haven't transplanted it yet, but I did give it some compost tea, and all of these new things, this is all new. So even succulents, this is a cactus. It does seem to appreciate a little bit of nutrition. Just because things can grow in crappy soil doesn't mean they really want to grow in crappy soil. And this is that aloe thing. Remember, I mentioned it was an itty bitty pot and it was half as big as my thumb. Yeah, this is it. It took a year, but it's starting to grow. It's not your typical aloe. It's one of those more stocky, stumpy looking ones. But it's doing really good here in the Voodoo Garden. I'm really happy with that. And just to show you that not everything is hunky-dory and perfect here in the Voodoo Garden, this is the Calanco, well, whatever it is here. Here's the name right here. Yeah, it's that. It was doing okay, and then I transplanted it into the compost. It did okay for a while, and then it just started to, I think the soil's too rich. This looks like leaf burn from the richness of the soil. Not all succulents can take this kind of a rich soil, and I'm learning that. See, some of them can, they can make an exception. Some of them, no, they don't want to be your exception. And I want to turn this around so that you can see something. Right inside here, look way down underneath this dead looking leaf. Let me move that out of the way. You can see some new roots. Yeah, it's putting out little roots down there. And that's my indicator that I'm going to cut that off below the roots and root that in a new mix that's heavier on the vermiculite and light on the compost. So I'm going to simulate more of a desert soil for this. Just a little bit of compost tea now and then, but not actual compost in the soil. So lesson learned on this one. Hey, how you doing? No mice? Congratulations. Little booger's hard at work. Well, that's just a few additions that I have to the Voodoo Garden. I wanted to share them with you so that you can see them from the very beginning. And with a little luck, keep our fingers crossed, they're going to grow and be healthy in here. If not, I guess it's just going to be a lesson learned. Luckily, I got them very inexpensive, so I don't have to worry so much about the cost of this. And but I wanted to share the tags with you. I thought it was adorable. Plant. Hi, my name is Houseplant. Well, thank you for that. That's just a short program here in the Voodoo Garden to introduce our new members, our new residents, and hopefully they're going to do just fine in here. I would love to have this be a corner plant and grow back here. That would be a nice little backdrop for the programs, wouldn't it? Yeah, I think so. Okay, I got to get going. We have things to do. I have to do stuff outside while it's still a nice day. It's going to get hotter. It's going to get hotter. But I got the fan going in here. It's nice and cool. It's morning time. It's a beautiful day in the Voodoo Garden. My favorite time to be in here. In the summer, it gets awful hot in here because I have to keep it closed and it gets humid. So I got to get out of here so that these plants can get back to the humidity they love, especially the ferns. Thank you for joining me here. If you have any questions or if you have any kind of suggestions on these things, I would more than welcome them in the comment section. I'll take a look at the comments to find out if there's anything I need to know on keeping these plants healthy. Until next time, this is Raina's Little Friends. We're out of here. Yes. Okay, you guys, back to your humid little homes.